Good morning. This is Kevin, and this is our show's Life on Purpose. And we have so much information to get to today. I'm going to jump right into this because we are going to be talking about disaster relief and peer support in a desperately impacted environment. And I have two guests. They have been certified peer supports and community health workers. I'll get to their bios in a teeny bit here, but let me start into the theme of the show today. Our community is still feeling the impact of Hurricane Helene, and we hope that everyone tuning in is safer, and has access to the resources they need. I recently was just confined to my neighborhood for about 3 weeks. I couldn't even get out of my neighborhood, and I have a lot to add. Again, from my perspective, we have a macro view of somebody that's working in community out into the rural areas, and we have somebody who's working in their community, almost like backyard stuff. And again, we're going to talk about this from a peer support perspective. We're going to be discussing the vital role that peer support can play in helping our community heal in the aftermath of a natural disaster like Hurricane Helene. Now, what's funny is that I've been in wartime conditions, and I've not experienced trauma or awakening of trauma like I have from this last 4 weeks. It's a learning experience. I'm processing as I go, and I'm learning as I go. And the two people sitting with me have been really, really helpful for the community at large. As I said, I mentioned certified peer support specialists. We are people with using lived experience in our recovery, whatever that's from, usually a substance use issue, behavioral or mental health. And again, there's also the community health worker's perspective of giving back to a community that either you grew up in or you've made it your community, your family. So Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness is a local nonprofit completely staffed by certified peer support specialists. And again, we use our experience to provide authentic support and resource connection and education to people. It's really hard to beat that idea that you've been there and done that, and somebody will pick up on that, even if it's a tiny thread to follow. It's a great modality, and I've been practicing peer support for probably 20 years now in some form or another. So crisis response and peer support after disaster. This is new to me, and I will get our guests' opinions about how new it is to them. Peer support can play crucial roles in helping individuals and communities recover. They operate in fundamentally different ways. Crisis response is typically immediate, focused on immediate essential services, medicine, food, shelter, safety, often delivered by emergency responders, healthcare professionals, and government agencies like FEMA. It addresses the urgent physical and emotional needs that arise in a chaotic manner after a disaster. Peer support, as it's shaping up now after a disaster, takes a more long-term approach. Peer support specialists, drawing from their own lived experiences, often provide emotional guidance, a sense of empathy, a sense of connection that fosters healing. While crisis responders may focus on the immediate survival and stabilization, peer support emphasizes ongoing emotional resilience, community rebuilding, and the restoration of hope and normality, or some sense of normalcy. This type of support extends beyond the initial response phase. Again, we're looking at a long haul here, probably over a couple of years period, not just once we get the immediate things patched up, then what? And that's what I'm looking at too. Again, this is an open-ended question for me. This is unexplored territory, and I hope we can do some exploration today and help out our audience and people who are in need of support. Let me introduce our guests. We have Kate and Kay. Did I say anything else? Both are colleagues. I've known both of them for Kay in particular for several years. Maybe 11 or 12.
I think it's been since 2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Seems like an eternity.
Yeah.
I think I met you originally doing Smart Recovery.
Yeah. When I started with the Study Collective is when we met.
And we were based out of Haywood Street Church. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. My memory isn't as bad as I think it is. Kate is a coworker in the education department at Sunrise. She is kind of the manager of chaos in that environment. me bringing a lot of chaos to the table. So let me give you a short bio. As soon as I get my phone unlocked here. So Kate is a person that no longer has chaotic relationships with substances or people. She has been in continuous abstinence for over 11 years. She loves working for an amazing nonprofit, Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness in Asheville. She's a peer support specialist and is passionate about helping people along with their wellness journey. And as training coordinator for Sunrise and peer support training, she enriches people's lives and education along with supporting peers in the Sunrise community and in the drop-in center and the community at large. Kay, here we go. I'm handling this well, right? I've been out of practice for, I missed a couple of shows due to illness and due to an emergency. So this feels like being home again, sitting in this seat. All right. Kay received their associate's degree with a concentration in social work and psychology in 2019 and began their Associate of Nursing program in January of 2024. Kay has supported people experiencing houselessness in the community and in a community setting, assisted with navigation and connection to resources as part of community outreach, and collaborated with community partners to best support individual needs. Additionally, Kay was a counselor in an opioid treatment center, provided equipment, support, resources, and naloxone to active substance users as part of syringe service programs, and educated the community regarding substance use. Even more important, that have it accepted in the community. That could be a whole show in itself, and opioid overdose response scenarios. Kay walks along others as they navigate their wellness journeys, believes in person-centered care and a harm reduction approach, and that everyone's journey is unique. Kay is on the board of directors at Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness, is a North Carolina certified peer support specialist, a community health worker, certified nursing assistant and recovery coach with training in mental health first aid, harm reduction best practices, and overdose prevention responses. That's a handful, you two.
Thanks,
Two
Kevin.
are a handful. Let's get to some questions. And again, feel free to expound as long and deep as you want to expound on. So, we know there's a difference between crisis response and peer support, or if we don't, we're finding out very rapidly. I am. Crisis response is about providing immediate attention for basic needs, and the other is about building longer-term relationships and support, or even short-term support. What role do you feel peer support plays in collaboration with first responders and emergency services such as EMTs, National Guard, mutual aid, and nonprofits?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a...
Do you want to answer that one first,
go
Kev?
first.
Take your
Oh,
time,
okay,
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, so when the storm first hit and I started going out there to help people, one of the big things I was saying is that I already have the skill set, and all I'm doing is taking it and retooling it for a disaster. It felt very similar in a lot of the things that I was doing, but also a little bit more because I was looking more at just what people needed in that moment to get by. But then again, when you look at peer support, that's really a lot of times what peer support is.
Okay.
Yeah, I found in going out in the community that, kind of similar to what Kate said, it was a matter of helping folks navigate resources was a big part of it, which is a big part of being a peer support, right? We've been in this community. We know the resources. We know how to get to them. And also providing some emotional support as well. But I find that when folks are not getting their needs met, their initial needs, it's a little bit harder to tap into that emotional
So
aspect.
you were going out into the rural areas, though. Weren't you going to Burnsville or Barnardsville?
I went into Swannanoa.
Okay.
I lived in Swannanoa for about a decade. So when I saw what was happening in Swannanoa, I wanted to go in and see how I could help. So a lot of my assistance was in the Swannanoa area.
So I don't want to... use triggering language, but what was that like to look at that community when you got there? Let me frame that, because I hadn't been out. I got out like a week, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I went down Biltmore Avenue. Super familiar. It wasn't familiar anymore. It was, I went, where's everything?
Right.
I was stunned.
Yeah.
I also had a cat emergency, so I'm dealing with that. And I'm trying to drive at night, driving around obstacles. I was in the Middle East, and it was reminded me of being in the green zone in Iraq. But yeah.
Yeah, so when my partner and I, we actually went out a few days after everything occurred, after we checked on people that we knew to the best of our ability, right? Because we couldn't really use our phones. The internet was down. That presented its own issue. And the best way I know how to describe it without like getting in the weeds with it, it was almost apocalyptic. Like you see apocalyptic movies. And that's my only reference, because I've never been in
as opposed to biblical. If I heard biblical one more time, I was going to scream. I'm sorry. Nothing against space systems.
Yeah, I mean, that was my frame of reference, was I've seen movies where you see things like this occurring, and it was similar. We were driving around trees. Things were in the road. This was before they had cleared the roads out. Yeah.
What about your backyard? How did you feel?
For me, I felt very lucky, but honestly, driving through the neighborhood, you could see some people had made it okay, but, you're looking at 90% of the people that had some serious damage to their houses. And I even said that to my husband. I was like, this feels like I'm in a post-apocalyptic movie right now.
Yeah.
So kudos to Kate's husband, who came to my neighborhood and looked around and said, hey, what do you need? So, yeah, I was super impressed. And you saw my neighborhood.
Oh, my gosh.
The land of splintered trees.
Yes, and like, what, you had mudslides, and, it's just
if
wild.
If the wind had been blowing the other way, clockwise or counterclockwise, and away from the house, that's what saved us.
Yeah.
Because everything else came down.
Yeah.
What challenges do you encounter in providing peer support when basic resources like housing, food, communications are disrupted? What do you go to? What's your go-to?
So kind of what I think has been touched on a little bit, and that I spoke about just a minute ago, is that it's really hard for folks to get down into their feelings and like what they're really experiencing when their basic needs of housing, food, water are scarce or hard to locate. So I feel like a lot of the initial work was connecting folks with resources, but as we continue on with this, because like you said, Kevin, it's going to be years before we really get to not some sort of normalcy, but some sort of sustained normalcy. That's when I feel like we're going to really get into how people have been mentally and emotionally impacted by this on a deeper level.
How about if the folks who are already houseless?
Right.
I can't imagine their response. We're already in it, and now we're in it even more.
Right. Right.
Any experiences?
I have not personally experienced that through the course of this yet, with the work that I have been doing. But yeah, I can't imagine. Like, folks are already trying to locate resources, and now the resources have been impacted. They've shifted. And with communication down, right? Like I said, we didn't have internet. A lot of folks will get on social media to find resources. We couldn't really text or call each other. So I can't imagine also being houseless and
isolation.
trying to, being houseless and trying to navigate shifting resources.
I think the isolation part impacted me the most, because I've always had my community. I could call Kate. I could call somebody at Sunrise. I couldn't call anybody. Couldn't barely get a text out. We couldn't even text.
No.
This constituted a complete reorganization of my survival and trauma patterns in the last going on 6 weeks now, and I'm still going through it. It was bizarre because the power came on last week, and I'm standing in front of my electric stove with my Coleman stove sitting on top of it, lighting it, getting ready to cook an MRE, and the lights are on, and I went like, something wasn't right in my mind. And I went like, wait a minute, you're lighting your Coleman stove and you've got an electric range and a microwave and an air fryer. Why don't you use one of those? But I went like, I don't want to go back to that because now I'm in a safe zone. I know what works. And this could go out at any time. That was my thoughts. And it's still kind of like I keep an eye on the Coleman stove.
Absolutely. I'm experiencing that too.
It's like I'm holding onto the guardrail and I'm not letting go of it. And I got candles everywhere in my living room. That was an experience. Like instead of TV or endless stupid sports stuff, which I like sports, but too much of it, or TikTok, I was lighting candles. And I had my 88.1. It was one of the few stations up and running, and my little solar-powered radio. I'm going, this is real, like, this is deep stuff. This is survival mode stuff.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
And I finished 3 books. My ADHD doesn't let me do that usually, and I said, that's all you got to do.
Absolutely. I read 3 books also, and I haven't finished a book in like 4 or 5 years. I read... Look, and now I'm going to forget the names of them. Of course, Atlas of the Soul, that was one of the first ones that I read by Brene Brown. Okay. I finished...
the big red book.
Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep. Yeah. That one was just amazing, honestly. Out of all of them, that's the one that stuck with me the most.
It's a deep one.
Yeah.
Okay, what did you do for entertainment? How did you de-stress?
So, I have 4 dogs, so they keep my partner and I entertained. You know, the county that I live in, Haywood County, there were areas of Haywood County that were devastated, but we were still functioning for the most part. So I was able to still get out, go for walks, and do the things that I have been doing to care for myself already. So, yeah.
Okay. How did you, for both of you, how did you approach, or did it differ from the way you usually do peer support? Did anything change up? Or did you have to, retool, rework?
I mean, I guess for me, it was a little bit of a switch. It wasn't so much of like the emotional side of it because I knew that we were all at the point of just trying to survive and figuring out what that was going to look like daily. So it was much more of meeting people where they were at and saying, what are your needs? What can I get you? Versus, some of the other...
Here's some food. Yes. Move on to the next one.
Yep.
I think for me, I always try to be really mindful of where I'm at and how I'm feeling. And I had to up that more so because I'm also living through this experience. So it was a matter of where am I at and am I at a capacity to be of service to others? So that was something that I've been doing and I continue to reevaluate as we move through this because it's going to come in waves.
Right. This will lead into the next question. This is an aside here. 4A. I noticed my emotional volatility increased 100-fold. So if I saw something that was remotely sad, I wouldn't just go, oh, I would burst into tears. Or I would fly into a rage. And these are old behaviors of mine that were like, several layers down, years, surfacing. They're kind of bubbling up through the muck. Anything similar happen?
I mean, absolutely. For me, I am very much part of my recovery is emotional regulation. And I felt that I lost that a lot. I wasn't able to regulate my emotions. I didn't have as much capacity as I usually do.
It startled me how much I diminished.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just like hairpin, and my emotions could change.
Yeah, I agree. I can relate to what y'all are saying. And having grace to recognize that we're in survival mode, and just allowing ourselves to just feel what we're feeling and have some grace around it because this is something, some folks may have experienced this before, but I think for a lot of us, this is new territory.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I went to Lumberton somewhere probably 2017. They were in the process of a 2-year recovery from one of the slow-moving hurricanes that moved through. It wasn't particularly windy, but it was rainy, and it just dumped. What county is Lumberton in?
I can't remember.
I don't either, but we were working with indigenous folks who didn't have any support from, the things that we're having support from, and now I'm even feeling that even more. I'm going like, 'cause they were telling me, Kevin, we've been here 2 years and nobody has paid attention to us. Again, we're still flooded out. Our infrastructure shattered. Housing is, people are living with their families again. So I'm just thinking of the long term, the marathon aspect of this, what we're facing. I also started experiencing a lot of dreams of like flooding, and
Yeah.
even though I didn't get flooded per se, I was aware of it, or landslide or earthquakes. I'm just having again apocalyptic dreams. We've subsided somewhat now. Do you have any suggestions on how to help the community manage this trauma and the shock that's experienced? Any, again, personal tips on emotional regulation? What works for you guys?
Really, I know I've mentioned this already, but pay attention to yourself. Like, pay attention, like when you start having some sort of reaction that's just abnormal, check in with yourself, see what's like really going on, what's coming up for you. And, Kate has mentioned your toolkit, and Kevin, you have as well. Sometimes in situations like this, some of our tools may be ineffective. So being willing to adapt and try new ways of caring for yourself, and resting as well. Like, I think, as helpers, we all have this desire to jump in, let's dive in, let's help, what can we do? But we can't help folks if we're not caring for ourselves. So
Absolutely.
that's a big part of being human, but also being a peer support for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, just trying to give people grace and also give myself that same grace, you know, and just like Kay was saying, of using the tools, but if the tools aren't working, that's okay. We can find other tools, and another thing is reaching out. Like, when you're having a hard time, letting other people know that you're having a hard time too, and receiving the same support that you're giving out. You got to keep the cup full.
And on the flip side of that, reaching in, we talk about reaching out. It can be really challenging to do that when you're having a hard time. So check on folks. Like, if you haven't heard from them, hey, how are you doing? Like, how are you actually doing? Because we like to say, oh, I'm doing okay. But like, how are you actually doing through this, and just in general?
Totally.
Okay. Let me remind everybody you're listening to Life on Purpose with Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness on Open Air at Asheville FM 103.3. Today we're talking about community support and peer support during a disaster. Let me come back to I heard from people I've not heard from in 25 years.
Yeah.
That astounded me. And I got a little offended. I'm like, well, what are you calling me now for? But I'm thinking, Kevin, they're reaching out because they're concerned, okay?
Right,
Like,
right.
Let the empathy valve open up a little bit in your heart. Don't be Ebenezer Scrooge of Helene. A lot of them were military friends that, again, they had gone onto their path. I went onto my path. And a lot of them we had to catch up on 25 years of stuff. And
Sure.
it had its benefits, and it also had its, opening, I want to open that door again. Because my post-military career was rough, to say the least. So what about you guys?
I was surprised by how many people reached out to me, and family members that I haven't talked to in decades, just reaching out, making sure that we're okay, that my family's okay. So the outpouring of love has been really, really powerful, and it's definitely helped me on some of those darker days where it feels like everything's a little overwhelming.
Yeah, I have a lot of folks that I know in the Swannanoa area, so I was actually doing some reaching in. I didn't necessarily hear from folks that I hadn't heard from in a while, but there were folks that I was concerned about. So I ended up actually going into Swannanoa to do a wellness check because no one had heard from this individual and their family, and they were safe and they were okay, but they didn't have any power, water, or a way to communicate out like we've talked about. So, there was a lot of checking in with each other. Are you okay? What do you need? What's going on? Because we all have experienced this in varying degrees, right? So our needs are all going to vary.
I remember, again, it sounds like I'm talking about ancient history, but when Engels opened up down by my house, no, they can only take cash, but I was so glad to see these doors open. I'm like, oh my goodness. And some of it looked a little picked over, but the niceness of the people, like, here, have free this and have some bananas and have this tables full of stuff they were giving away. I also noted, conversely, I got a lot more fingers from people on the road because I didn't get out of their way in time, because I'm going the speed limit and they're going like behind me going, eh. And this anger, the anger is palpable.
Absolutely.
It's scary.
Yeah. It's that grace component, though, that Kate was talking about.
Right.
Like, we have to try our best to cultivate grace for others, because we're all going through this, and it's the trauma and the impacts of it are coming out in so many different ways.
Very true.
Well, my solution for that was to go even slower. And I said, I'm not going to be in a hurry. I'm sorry. It's like, I'm sorry if I'm in your way, but if I slow down, I can see things better and I can react faster.
Sure.
Keep regulated.
That's right.
It was bizarrely not funny, but that night that Helene hit, it was a Wednesday or going on Thursday. I went out in it. And I went like, oh, it's just raining. I went to get cat food, something I did not need. I'm just going to take a ride down the street. And I got caught in it, and the roads were starting to flood already. And I'm going, this is super dangerous. I have made the worst decision of my life, and I'm not even like halfway there yet. So I got there, went in, drenched because I didn't have an umbrella, came out, and then drove home. I was literally going through a foot of water already.
Right.
Water.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just these random memories that pop in.
I did not take the storm as seriously as I should have. You know, my husband did a grocery run right before,
Milk and
right
eggs.
as it was hitting, and he bought a pack of water, and then he also bought 2 packs of seltzer water, because if the water goes out, we can just drink seltzer water. So, you know, the water went out, and then we were living off of seltzer water for 2 days, and I'll tell you, it's not as hydrating as you would think.
It's salty, yeah. Right. Luckily, luck of the draw, totally. I had gone camping. I just want to know, I went to KOA about 2 weeks before the storm. And I had all my stuff, like I didn't use a lot. I had all my supplies. I had MREs. I had cases of water, Coleman stove. But so I was positioned, at least luckily. And I just had my backpack, and I said, no, just kind of unload the backpack. Sleeping bag in the bed.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I had a go bag as well. Like, I had a backpack once this happened with items in case I needed to, whatever. Like, you don't know what you were going to encounter in the first couple weeks. So as I'm out there doing the work, I've got an extra pair of clothes, I've got an extra battery, I've got extra food and
Batteries,
water.
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, having that, you didn't know, but you were already kind of prepared. And so, I kept that. I still actually have it packed in the event that I need it for anything at this point.
This is the first day I've not had my headlamp on. I've been carrying that with me too, as a safety valve, so to speak. I just reached up to my neck, and it's not here, and it's not here. I didn't bring it.
Yeah, Lauren was sitting around with one of those too. Just had it on
nice
and ready to
have.
go.
And you're not feeling helpless until the lights go out and you're sitting in darkness and you're trying to find this or that item or your wallet.
Right.
Everything becomes magnified. And that was the other thing I noticed, like the simple test, going to the bathroom, navigate that.
Right. Everything was a hurdle.
Everything's harder, yeah.
Yeah, you have to work at.
Yeah, and there's a sense of pressure along with that.
Right.
Let's digress for a moment. I've been talking about like the disaster aspects. Tell me, or if you have pictures you can show me those moments of grace. I found time to do photography in the midst of a day, and I just went out and took pictures of stuff, not particularly like bad stuff, but just nature. What did you guys encounter? Or people encounters. Did you see something and went, oh, look at those folks?
Yeah, so like I said, I live in Haywood County, and we walk a lot around Lake Junaluska. It remained open for the most part, so being able to walk around, see other folks walking around, just brought, a sense of normalcy. That's something that my partner and I do pretty regularly. Yeah.
What's funny, the place I've lived there for a year and a half, and it's off a beaten stretch of road. It's in the woods. The houses are kind of spread out. And I literally did not speak to any neighbors, and I'm not super reachy-outy anyway, friendly, but this time people were up and down the street, moving wires out of the road, helping, and it was a real act of, I haven't had that sense of comradeship since I was a kid. Our neighborhood used to be tight, but I've not experienced that community tightness in a long, long time.
Absolutely.
Now it's kind of, and then everybody left. I was the only person on my street with no street lamps, no power. I honestly kept some defensive stuff around me because I was just nervous about what if somebody comes up and breaks in, or what am I going to do? I don't want to hurt anybody, but on the other hand, I got 2 cats I have to defend. That was, again, another experience. And just with seeing the street lamps on, and I've always had this theory from watching so many science fiction or horror movies, but when the lights go out, civilization goes out the window a lot of times, unless people can pull it back together. I mean, the things that bind us as a society are materialistic, or it's energy, or it's resources, and we don't have them. It's like, ooh, everything goes to hell.
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion.
That survival mentality.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Me
For
first.
sure. Yeah.
But I found moments of grace where it wasn't me first. It's here. Have a case of water. Take it. And all the people that showed up, the convoy of hope down on Merriman Avenue, this tractor trailer just showed up every day, and they seem evangelical workers because they asked to pray with me, and I was like, thanks, but no thanks. You save the prayers for somebody that has that faith system, and I was polite about it. But you sure you don't want us to pray for you? I'm like, nah, I am, but I'll take the water and the cleaning supplies. Thank you. Thanks for coming here.
Yeah.
I got a chance to talk to some of the soldiers that are deployed from the 101st Airborne, combat. These are combat guys or combat support, and the National Guard. I felt comfortable seeing them around. It didn't feel like martial law. It felt like, oh, there's an extra set of eyes and hands there. So I also I saw somebody on the court. He was a young man, Army uniform. I was Air Force, but I was looking at his uniform, and he had his hat off, his cover off. And he's like, you might want to put that cover on, soldier. I'm like, Kevin, you listen to yourself, old Master Sergeant. But for his benefit, he just was just kind of standing there, and I'm going, oh, okay, when you're representing an organization.
Yeah, the community. One of the things that made me the most emotional was the community coming together. And when I was doing some work with an organization out in Swannanoa, I was doing work alongside people from South Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania. People were showing up from all over the place.
I know,
like, what can we do? What do you need? And that for me was one of the most impactful experiences, was just not only our mountain people coming together, but just from all over the United States. And then at one point, as I was driving through Swannanoa, there were Canadian linemen.
Oh, wow.
So we've got folks coming from Canada, repairing our light poles and our lights in our community. So that's really powerful.
Absolutely.
I know, because we consider, again, our mountain enclave like pretty self-sufficient. Like, well, we don't need help. We're pretty able.
Right.
But nice to have the help. Any other moments from along those kinds of thoughts? Anything that still is resonating with you?
When I was helping my community, or when I've been out actively doing supply runs, the first couple of times people were a little bit hesitant as we came up, but when they saw us coming up regularly, it got to the point where the kids actually saw your car pull up and they'd run out and they'd be all excited because they knew you were bringing stuff. And, just like those little moments of being able to see joy on someone's face was really, really powerful.
Yeah.
How do you balance your own mental health and emotional well-being while supporting others during something like this? Some tricks. Now, I would mention CRM, the Community Resiliency Model Training. I haven't heard that mentioned at all in the courses. Is it outmoded now? Is it not?
I don't think so.
Now?
I don't think so.
This is all the regulation and grounding and visioning. I'm surprised there's not more workers out, unless I'm just not seeing it.
I think they're starting to come out. One of the places we're working with is called AmeriCares, and they actually provide support to the first line or second line people that are out here. So we're working on doing some decompression trainings with them, and I believe they have some resiliency skills that they're going to be sharing with us.
Okay.
So I know that it's coming. I think that it might just be a little bit slower
Right.
or more of a second phase than that first phase of just like get supplies there, make sure that people are found and, you know, at least okay.
No, it's when I took this training, I took it a couple of times. It's interesting. County was sponsoring it for a while. I'm thinking of Haiti. I'm thinking of faraway places that have earthquakes. I did not think of my own backyard. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is what it's for.
Right.
Who's been helping you guys? I'm saying you guys a lot. Who's your supports?
My family. So I do have a family member that lives not too far away from me, but most of my family is out of state. So I've gotten a lot of support from them, which I really appreciate. It's kind of a double-edged situation because they can't quite know what's going on here, which I'm grateful for that they're not experiencing this. So they're supporting as best as they can. And then my partner, you know, she's very community oriented. And so we've both, you know, instead of stepping back from what's going on, we're going into it. And she's been fantastic. We check in with each other, you know, how are you doing? What's going on? We talk about like really impactful things that we've witnessed or experienced. And that's been helpful. And my community, right? Because we are all experiencing this together. Like I said previously, in varying degrees, and just being able to talk about what's going on in spaces where we can do that has been really helpful.
Absolutely.
I'm not cognizant, and I don't have a list in front of me in terms of what Sunrise is providing now with in-person groups and Zoom groups. What are we doing?
That's a good question.
I haven't put it all together yet.
Right. And I think we're still working on pulling it all together, but we will be offering a RAP skills group to help support people, to help especially people, you know, other peer supports that would be interested in joining us. It's all about building your skills and building your toolbox versus just doing what would be a typical RAP 2-day training.
Remind people what RAP is.
Yeah, RAP is Wellness Recovery Action Planning, and you can find it at wellnessrecoveryactionplanning.org.
Again, it's a crisis plan within a crisis plan. It's built for every phase of people's recovery or getting back into their happy space again.
Yeah, and I'm really looking for, just as the training coordinator, looking for additional trainings for our staff that is going to help them build resiliency tools, because for me right now, I know that's what I need, and asking other people, it seems like that's been a very common theme.
I may digress here, but without giving much about Kay's other parts of her life. What can you talk about the hospital environment, or are you?
Sure.
You're in training, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before I do that, I want to add that Sunrise has their Helene Survivors Support Group.
That's right.
That's
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and I actually attended that, and I found that to be very helpful. And it's what is it? Tuesdays. Help me out, Kate. Tuesdays at 12:30 to 1:30.
Yep. That's right.
At the drop-in center, which you're going to have to give the address.
Yeah, that's a 209 Tunnel Road in Asheville, North Carolina.
And give a website too.
Oh yeah, and then our website, you can find all of this information at sunriseinasheville.org.
Cool.
Yeah, so going back to your question, Kevin, the hospital initially was experiencing the same issues that the community was experiencing. So I was not working at that time. Like I'm in the middle of getting my nursing degree, as Kevin mentioned, and our school kind of just halted until recently. And when I was able to finally get in and work a shift on the floor that I work on, there was some normalcy that had come back, but you know, you had medical professionals staying overnight when everything first happened. They were locked in for days on end. trying to navigate the water situation because you want to keep your patients safe. You have to have water. You have to be able to care for them. And then there was a facility, I believe it was out in Marion, that provides IV fluids, and that was hit. And so we've got an IV fluid
Backup shortage.
Shortage. So the hospital system, made it through, but there were MREs that folks were eating. There was limited water. I think the hospital's still trucking in water. So yeah, just adapting and moving as best as they can to continue to care for folks.
Right. I also worked for Mountain Area Health Education Center, MAHAC. The main campus is on Biltmore. And they deployed since that campus was closed because of all the power issues and water, they deployed to other parts of the community. All my friends who were health providers in different capacities. Do you feel a semblance of normalcy returning a little bit? Ish.
Yeah. I mean, the best way I know how to put it for folks that are listening that maybe aren't in this area is like you can drive down the road and everything looks normal, and then you turn a corner and
it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. And so it's kind of like, yes, maybe, kind of. I mean, school has restarted for folks. Most folks have been able to go back to work in some capacity, potentially. But yeah, the evidence of what we've all experienced is still here. And so it's not something you necessarily can get away from, so to speak.
If I was born in the last 10 years, I've gone through a 3-year pandemic.
Right.
Where I wasn't in school most of the time. And now a natural disaster where I'm out of school again. I'm like, I'm wondering how this is going to look down the pike.
Right.
Not being a parent, but I'm curious to get some, maybe your viewpoints on what do you think we're looking at? What are the long-term mental health impacts, and what's our substance use prognosis?
That's such a broad question,
it really is, but it's multi-tiered, yeah.
Because folks, we're all different, and we all handle things differently, and so, I mean, depending on folks' ability to heal from and cope with what's occurring, it could look okay, or it could look pretty catastrophic. So I think it just depends on whether or not folks are caring for themselves and have the mental health resources that they need.
So what mental health resources do we have that are go-to? I don't have my list in front of me, but what would be a short list? Who could?
You mean local?
Yeah. Is BHUC open?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know what their hours are, but the behavioral health urgent care is what Kevin's referring to.
You have to check it every week.
It does vary, yeah.
It varies. So that's sometimes it was 24/7 or it was 8 to 8. It's a walk-in clinic. It's on 356 Biltmore downstairs, where people can get some mental health counseling right there, or they'll get you to someplace that can help down the pike. You can stay there for a bit too. The residency requirements change too. Sometimes you could stay there for 2 days. Sometimes it was 3. Sometimes it was the weekend. Peer living room open? I haven't been back there.
I think so. Yeah.
I'm getting yeses.
I believe so.
Same place, different. Do a right turn instead of a left turn, and you get downstairs.
All Souls Counseling is operational. Another resource, it's not local, but if you have reliable internet access, is Open Path Collective, where you can get set up with a therapist on a sliding scale.
Right.
Either in person, because you can search with your zip code, or remotely.
What about safe syringe programs? Is Steady Collectives operative?
I think they are, because they remained mobile. They've been mobile for a while. I'm not quite sure of what their hours and days and stuff looks like. I don't know if holler harm reduction is operational or not, because I know that...
Which county is that?
That's out in like Marshall, Mars Hill, I
Okay.
believe, and they do serve into Asheville, like north of Asheville. But I know that some folks involved with that may have been impacted, so I'm not sure what that looks like.
How about the mobile clinics? I haven't seen the Minnie Jones bus around, but I'm sure it's out and about. Appalachian Health has a van staffed with medical professionals and a social worker and a counselor. That's a green and white van that goes. I've seen them in some of the housing areas. Trying to think what else. Like again, just off the top of my head.
AmeriHealth, Caritas, they have been offering, they have a mobile van that comes and goes. I'm not quite sure
That's right.
when it's up here, but you can check on their Facebook. That's what I would recommend to stay up with them. Also, AmeriCares does have a van, or not a van, I'm sorry, like one of the big buses also, and they've been actually setting up right over by Sunrise, our drop-in center, to provide mental health, and I think it's like immediate wound care
Got it.
type of stuff.
What about the syringe service program at the health department? Is that operating?
SSP.
Yeah, I believe
I
that
think
they
it
are.
is. I thought I saw Justin saying we could use help anytime.
Yeah,
If you want something to do, come on in.
yeah.
Let me kind of personalize this because, again, all our journeys are individual and unique. How do you think your journey has prepared you for this, and will continue to prepare you for this? And what adjustments are you making in your own regimens or continuity of care? And you can digress into your if you've got to bring in past stuff. By all means, talk about what got you here.
Yeah, absolutely. To make a joke, but also not to make a joke, my trauma response in crisis is to like get on the ground and start doing stuff.
Right.
So truly, once this happened, it was like, okay, this is my time to shine almost. And of course, on the back end, a lot of that is making sure to take moments for myself and make sure that I'm checking in with myself, because I understand that that's a response that I have to things. So even though I'm using it in a good way, it could still possibly be damaging. So, again, just being really hyper aware of where I'm at and how I'm feeling and asking for help when I need it.
Yeah, for me, a lot of us have lived in chaos. Like chaos was our normal. And so I say, I was surviving and now I thrive. So being in that survival mode is something that I don't want to live in, but it's not something that's abnormal or something that I've never experienced. So similar to what Kate's saying, like being mindful of myself, where I'm at and how I'm feeling, which I've spoken about a little bit ago. Just taking care of yourself and being aware. There was a point where my partner and I were volunteering quite a bit, and she was like, all right, I'm gonna go out, and I said, I'm not. Like, I need today to rest. I'm starting to feel the impacts, and I was able to be like, it's heartbreaking to be at a point where I'm like, I can't go out today, but I have to take care of myself.
Right. Absolutely.
Again, another reminder about Sunrise Community for Recovery and Wellness. It is a nonprofit staffed entirely by certified peer support specialists who utilize their lived experience to provide authentic peer support, resource navigation, education to individuals struggling with trauma that often leads to substance use and mental health issues and challenges. So find out more at www.sunriseinasheville.org. What did I leave out? What else do you want to talk about? I had my short list and I had some brainstorms on the way in, but what am I missing?
I'll just add that in the past week, I have actually felt myself coming out of my trauma response. But it took that long. It took, it's been 6 weeks now? So 5 weeks of being in that response.
It seems like a dream to me almost.
Right?
It just
Yeah.
seems wispy and ethereal.
Yes,
I know it is.
absolutely. Like, I can't actually grasp it. And, so I think just being aware of that and just being like, okay, I'm actually coming out of this now. It's even more important to take care of myself and reach out to others and make sure that we're all kind of helping each other take care of ourselves.
I had to keep an eye on my what I was doing for entertainment because I was just, again, started reading books again, and now I've gotten sloppy, and I've noticed since I've got a little bit of connectivity, I'm back, I'll just watch 10 minutes of TikTok, and it turns into a half hour
Right.
all night.
I have been trying to keep up with some of those creative things that I picked back up. I've always been an artist, so, working as a peer support, I have hobbies, but, of course my life has been kind of consumed by peer support, and some of my hobbies fell off. So in the last, 5 weeks, with what I call a forced disconnection, I have started to paint again, and I have started to embroider again and actually drawing my own custom embroidery. So I've been trying to keep that going too, because during all of that, it helps so much to feed that part of me.
I live basically in a basement apartment, so there's not a lot of windows, so I have to be careful about getting enough light, and I would actually sit outside, which led to an injury because I was sitting under a tree and a branch fell on me.
Oh no.
So, and this is again the scary part of isolation. I'm laying there, this branch came crashing down. I was in a sitting position, so it caught me across my quad, ended up tearing a muscle, bruise, hematoma. But I'm laying there going, my phone doesn't work, my landlord's away,
Right.
I'm laying here, and there's nobody within, my neighbors are gone, they've evacuated to other places. So I said, is it broken? I kept thinking, broken femur, that's the worst bone you could probably break, sort of something cervical. And my heart started to, I said, don't panic, just, can you move it? Yeah, it hurts. Can you walk, can you crawl over to and get in the apartment? Yes. But boy, that was a moment of 10 minutes of total panic. And that was just, not a super bad injury, but it was severe, but geez Louise. Your options are limited.
Yeah.
Right.
And it does feel, I know that when I've had close calls, it just feels a lot more dangerous right now because I'm aware of all of the emergency services being at capacity.
Right.
So it's like,
I don't
I
need their
really
help.
shouldn't hurt myself right
No.
now,
Exactly. Also, vet emergencies. I had a vet emergency 2 weeks ago and I'm also a helicopter owner, so we're helicopter fur baby parent, so anything, if he sneezes, I'm on it. But getting him to a vet that was open, and first thing you do, pick up the phone. Oh, my phone's not working.
Right.
Oh, I can't do an online thing. So drive down there and said, you guys open, and drive back and get Kitty, and then drive back again. And it was 3 different vets in 4 days. He was not happy with me. He's like, okay, just let me die.
Well, and there were veterinary.
And you have fur babies too.
Yeah.
Jeez,
There were
Yeah.
veterinary services that were open and operating, but again, it was that aspect of where are they? I
Yeah.
can't get on my phone and locate it. I can't call. So it's the vets were trying to get out to folks, but knowing where they were at was a little problematic.
Yeah.
And Amazon. Let me touch on Amazon. I'm rolling my own eyes at myself because I am appalled at my shopping habits, that I am so lazy.
Yeah.
That I need a pair of fingerless gloves. Boom. I need liners for my air fryer. Just the most incidental stuff, and it was taken away from me.
Yeah.
A lot of my Kindle stuff is online. I couldn't get to Kindle until the library opened up their internet site, and I'm driving down at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm down to North Asheville Library looking at my laptop. So we want to continue these kinds of conversations through our next couple of iterations. So I think we want to get Lauren in here, and we want to get Zach Penland maybe together, because can combine that brain power and keep talking about this, because I say watching this stuff evolve, it's a learning process. It's all take notes and reconvene and say what we can do going forward.
Absolutely. And again, check us out at sunriseinasheville.org.
We're here to help. Take care. Be safe.